Welcome to Real Life Without Excuses. I am America's Supermom.
Yeah, I love how we had our own fall festival. Whenever, that was just too funny. That was fun.
Recognize who you are, what you'd like to see in your life, and who you'd like to partner with.
I love that. And, that's coming from a place of power.
She makes. I have written with women who have been through things I could not even imagine. You can tell the old story. Don't dwell on the old story because most of your friends are not trauma counselors.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us again for another session of Bold Voices. We are so excited to be here today, and we have another co-host today. We've got Mary here with us, so we're really excited to get into today's conversation. We're talking about men and vulnerability. So we've got quite a list of guests that are here with us today. So we're excited to get into today's conversation. So I am LaChelle, also known as America's Supermom, mother of 15 children, and I love being able to connect with people, to hear their stories, and just build community. That's really what I'm about. So I could go into everything that I do, but y'all can read it in my profile. I'm excited to be here today. And now I'm going to throw the mic over to you, Misty. Hey, how are you doing today?
Hi, great. Thank you. I'm Mistilei from Campground TBD Publishing, and I do the wide variety. I run a campground and a publishing house, and I am excited to be on this panel with everyone. And just, I love that we're having the men on, so I'm really excited about this. It's exciting for me.
Me too. I'm excited. Over to you, Raschell.
Hey, my name is Raschell Harlingten, and I am the founder of Roots for Success, where we really support people in their transformation. I'm also a podcaster of the Transformational Soul Talks. And as I always say, I love to share people's stories, their transformations, because somewhere that story can support someone else in making that change. So really excited to be here today and dive deep.
Loving that. And we have Mary. Mary is our super connector. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but she is so supportive of people's posts and engaging. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not the best multitasker. So I was like, do you mind coming on and kind of helping us? Because when the men are on, people are excited. They get to being in the comments and all this, and I can't read it all. So I'm glad to have you, Mary. So please introduce yourself.
Oh, well, it's good to be here, LaChelle. And I just am happy to spread the love and the joy. It's my favorite thing to meet new people and engage. So thank you so much for having me. And guys, in the comments, I will do my best to be working on responding to you and bringing up some things that you're saying. So LaChelle's able to see those and we can talk about them. So thank you all for being here. And LaChelle, I just appreciate your time very much.
I'm so glad that you're here because, that's a part of having community is everybody can't be on camera, but everybody is valuable. Everybody's input. I love it because, I'm a deep thinker sometimes. And so someone may make a comment and then I'm like, oh, wow, that was a mic drop. And then I forget what I'm doing. Okay. So I'm not ignoring the people that are in the comments. I just got to stay focused, So I'm excited about, being vulnerable because I think a lot of people think that's a weakness more so than a superpower. So what are you guys' thoughts about being vulnerable?
I definitely think it's something that as a society, we really need to talk about a lot more. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Back in the day where it was like, oh, don't say nothing, just keep it within the family. Don't keep it quiet. I think it's really important now that it's starting to come out and more people are sharing their feelings and feeling vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we've seen we've gone through enough generation to see that that was the wrong path.
Yes.
That keeping that secret actually what caused the implosion. And we must talk. I went to a camp, it was for horses and learning to read energy between horses. And when I walked in, she gave me a cup and it said, the power is in the vulnerability. And I was just like, it took me a minute to accept that as truth, but it was being vulnerable in that space with the horses. They did exactly whatever you want them to do if you'll just relax and, you know, be vulnerable to it. So I love the vulnerability topic and getting it out, like you said, Raschell.
I love that. Mary, do you have any other thoughts? Anything we didn't cover about being vulnerable?
I definitely think it's a topic worth discussing, and you know, looking at how we can make people more comfortable, and also, you know, having that empathetic ear to listen. I feel like is a lot of the biggest thing that we could do. So I'm excited to hear what we've got for today. It's a good topic.
Me too. So I want to say thank you guys so much. I see that there are comments that are coming through, and I just want to thank all of you guys for joining us. Please share the broadcast, ping your friends, and, you know, ping is a term from Clubhouse, so maybe that's not the right terminology, but invite people in, send them the link, you know, so that they can look at it live or later on. But I'm excited to get these men on. We've got quite a few of them, and they all are doing great things in the world. So we want to be able to have time to talk to them. So I'm excited to have them all on. And welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're going to turn it over to Raschell, who is going to get us started. And we're going to get into this conversation with vulnerability.
Well, welcome, everybody. Hope you're all feeling good in different time zones, or are we all in the same time zone?
Oh, no.
Different. Yeah.
Different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So my first question for anybody who feels they want to answer is, why do you feel vulnerability for men is very important?
Well, that's the show, folks. We cleared that up real quick. Thanks for having me. It was great. Well, I guess I'll start.
Don't all answer.
Well, why don't you guys answer it for us? Because that being said, I think you said it right before we got on. There's a shift, and there's a fine line between being vulnerable and still being, for lack of a better term, that man type person, you know, where you bottle stuff up. And I think that fine line, it's really tough because people want you to be vulnerable, but they also want you to be, for lack of a better term, tough. And there's a happy balance that I think people are either getting or they're not getting. And I think it's generational. Most of the guys in this room are maybe of a certain age that were brought up a certain way versus today, or those 20, 30 somethings that were brought up a little bit differently. I think that there's good and bad in everything. So I don't think that being too vulnerable is a problem, and I think not being vulnerable enough is a problem. And on that, I'll, as the people in Clubhouse like to say, land my plane.
Love that. Love that.
Did anybody else want to share their thoughts on that question?
Well, I feel that it also comes back from a generational thing. Like when we're growing up, there's that perception or stigma behind, you know what, you are either a lady or you are a boy, and you have to live to this stereotype. And because we come up in that culture of being in school, we're working with those peer pressures, and we're starting to develop those unhealthy patterns as we move forward in our life without even sort of any sort of recognition or sight into them. And when we do that, we carry that forward, and then we start to get into the point where we're taking that kind of youthful attitude or experience or environment, and we're bringing that into our workforce, where that's not the culture. That's not where, if you don't take that moment to be vulnerable, then there's a good chance that you could, you could bring something to the table that hasn't been seen before, right? So taking that moment or leap of faith can be crucial to some careers out there. And if you're going to not take that leap of faith, then you can accept the consequences that come with that.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Definitely important. Yeah.
Love
And
that.
I also think there's a big mixture, there's a big spectrum of what we mean by vulnerability, from there's a bear attacking me right now to, I'm having a minor problem, to what often happens when you're a guy is you have a minor problem that you can't share and can't ask for help with. And then it turns into a major problem, and it gets bottled up until you crack. And that's where you have real issues. And I think one of the things that the younger generation does do a better job than some of us, as someone kindly said, of a certain age, is to be able to ask for help in a healthy way when things are still anthills and not yet mountains.
Wow.
I love that.
Point. Yeah.
Can I go?
That's awesome.
Go
ahead, Matt.
Thank you. I'm still a young boy. I'm not of a certain age, and really my vulnerability, I see it as my strength, because vulnerability is not necessarily a weakness. It's just a reflection of the fact that you understand where you're at, you understand that you have weaknesses, and your strength is that you're prepared to face those and accept them and discuss them openly. I think, there is a traditional sense of a man needs to be a certain way, but I think, like I quite often say, it's 2023. It's time that we did things differently. It's time that we talked about these things rather than burying them underneath the mattress, for want of a better phrase.
Wow. So true.
That is true. Yeah, love that. Now, we have someone in the chat. I'm able to hear it, see it, y'all. Why don't you think that a certain generation of people have problems with this whole thing of asking for help? So what is it that we can do to kind of foster a better environment for them to feel comfortable opening up?
Breaking in early culture, as I'm starting to open the minds up earlier, that there is no flaws in taking that moment to be vulnerable. You're bringing something to the table that is uniquely you as well.
If I may say something, to answer the question, I mean, men and women, vulnerability and so forth, there's no right or wrong. There's no wrong in the past generations, because situations dictate whether one is vulnerable or not, whether you're a man or woman. So that's besides the point. I remember growing up, my mom would tell me, we do not hang our laundry out there. And I'm sure everybody realizes that. And it's true, because what happened is that the moment everybody expect everything to be supposedly societally right, the moment they see something wrong, and they'll do a moonwalk on you. So situations dictate that. Over the years and generationally, what you have is that situations have changed because people want to see the real you, because the real you encompasses everything. Like vulnerability is not a weakness, it's an area of strength, and it shows the genuine you. And when you bring it down, whether it's a business situation or a one-to-one relationship, you find that failures in one-to-one relationship, whether it's friendship or intimate relationship, boy, girl, or in this case, gender neutral, the breakdown is when one is afraid to be vulnerable to the other. That means the knowing of a person, the totality of a person, if I may say.
Yes, I agree with that. If I may go first, Matt.
You go whenever you like, brother.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Just remember me, Raschell. My hand was up.
So I agree with Johnny, and a few other points that were made as well when it comes to generational things that are passed down from your parents down to you and everybody else in your family. I think that, it can literally destroy the family if you're not vulnerable and are willing to talk about your feelings. I think that, not only is it self-destructive to you, but also to your health. And, every other relationship that you have outside of the house as well. So I think that being vulnerable, like Johnny said, is a strength. It's not a weakness.
I love that. Good stuff. Go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, polite English guy as ever. Plus, I'm a small boy, so I have to raise my hand and ask permission. But yeah, guys, I completely agree. I think generationally, just looking at other generations, younger people, because I'm not perhaps as old as some of you, but younger generations than some of us, they tend to be focused a bit more on they're special and they're of benefit to society as an individual. Whereas in the past, talking from my own environment, it was very much sort of just be quiet, sit in the corner, don't make a mess, don't involve yourself in anything, you just be quiet. Whereas nowadays it seems to be more people looking for fame, people looking for some degree of out there that makes them different. And I think that's something that we can capture as older men to look at and think, we're all unique, you are the miracles, but at the same time, we're all society, we're all one. And we need to try and find a way to mesh that together, bring about a society of guys that appreciate that we all have value, but we all have value individually and as a group.
I think you bring up a good point. That's a tough point to bring up, which is this. You know, years ago, back in the olden days where men were men, right? And the sheep were scared. You know, you have to, it's a different time. And yes, we can bash being a history major in college. One thing I found is you can't always take today's values and look at the past and put them on the same lens. Mm-hmm. That said, people, somebody said it before, you want fame, you want all this other stuff. We're on the internet. Everybody is more personal, which is a good thing, but it also comes at a cost. Mm-hmm. You know, Johnny just brought about the point about her mom. Don't put out your laundry. And I think that there's the right way and the wrong way. And right now, I really do believe when it comes to vulnerability, yes, it is almost a badge of courage to say how vulnerable you are. But that also comes at a cost, because being too vulnerable at the wrong place at the wrong time could be damaging. And I think the difference between years ago and today is, yes, you're a guy, you bottle it all up. Where today, yes, you're a guy, you bottle it all up, but you release it in certain ways. You talk to certain people. You have your tribe. You have whatever it is that you do. And I think that's the biggest difference that I see. But I think being too vulnerable can be a problem too. Maybe that's a different conversation for guys and girls or women or whomever, but that's what I find is the biggest problem, is finding out where that line is between vulnerability versus, because at the end of the day, I'm in the medical field. I teach CPR and first aid. Mm-hmm. There's not too much. You either do it or you don't. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's too black and white, but when you have that family in front of you, you either blank or get off the pot. And that's just the way I've always been in that situation. So I know that's not everybody's situation, but that's where I'm coming from.
That's good stuff. I think that is really good. How do you, and I mean, bringing up the whole thing about being too vulnerable, you know, I think that's a good thing to kind of highlight, because, you know, how do you know if you're going too vulnerable? I mean, what should be the gauge for that?
The situation will dictate on how vulnerable one can be. And as everyone said and agreed that, you know, that this is generational situation, and that's beyond us. Like I say again, we have an opportunity as we take ownership of vulnerability. Vulnerability is not about the other person. Vulnerability is about ourselves. And so when we look through there are two separate but equal forces that govern all of our thought process. Everyone, that is, okay? Love or fear. When we look through the lens of love, it's about the other person. That's why how many times we ourselves go through, we sacrifice ourselves. Oh, don't worry about it, y'all. I'll take care of it. We get the short end of the stick. It's for the other person. That's being vulnerable. And we just don't realize that, right? However, the flip side of the equation, when we look through the lens of fear, it is about us. It's not about the other person. It's that me thing. And that's when everything starts to choke up. The interesting thing about it is that the degree of the vulnerability is again dictated by situation, by the person you are encountering. Never fear about being vulnerable, because what happens is this: if that person does not connect with you, look at the picture of a dartboard. You got the bullseye, you got the next ring, the ring out, the ring out, the ring out. When it's all said and done, all the rings are still on the dartboard. The bullseye are the bullseye. Those are the ones that you have the 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you can be totally vulnerable with, basically. For lack of better term, guys, we've been in the dormitory showers where we have nothing on. Ladies, you've done the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the person beside you? Heck no.
Right.
But the point is that situation dictates that allows us to be able to be vulnerable. And the new generation, the beauty of it is that because they want the real thing, they want the real you. They Google the Google, okay? Because they want to see the authentic you.
But the
and
problem
authenticity is a big word. Now it's authentic integrity that makes a difference.
But everybody wants authenticity, but really that's a whole separate conversation, which is authenticity. And I agree with you, Johnny, but at the same time, it's just like it frustrates me as someone that goes on a lot of social media platforms. There's your social media life, and then there's your real life, because we all have the dirty laundry that clumps up into the corner.
Sure.
And I think that, that's the biggest problem I see is even when we're authentic, are we really authentic? And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. It's just, but you make a great point about love and fear, because our biggest problem is ourselves.
To answer your question is that we live 3 separate lives: me, myself, and I. Me is our public life. Myself is our true authentic self. I mean, our self, period. Nobody knows. Our spouse don't even know that. I is the combination of the two. The me is like Robert De Niro would say, "You talking to me? You talking to me? Huh? I want to be tough," right? Because that's our public life, is what we want to see. So when you talk about social media, that's what it is. It depending on what our goals are. You see, the classic example, and I'm not going to name any channels, any situations, and so forth. Okay, right? News is news, but what is it? Is it news for entertainment or news for reality? My point is you are consciously making a decision on what that me is going to look like, that tough guy, because so that nobody pick on me, okay? But the myself is the real thing. And then finally the I. The I is the combination of me and I, me, myself, and I, to give you the authentic self. Everybody is authentic, believe me. But the difference is now, the key to it is what people are looking for, the younger generations are looking for, that separates everybody else, even when they are social media. That's why they Google the Google. The authentic integrity. That's what they're looking for. And they don't care, young, old, or whatever. They're looking for the integrity. The authenticity, everybody is authentic. Trust me. There's nobody who is not authentic.
That's good. I love that. I've never heard that before. That's great. We're going to go to you, Matt, and then Misty.
So I always judge it by this. If they turn off the Zoom chat, you've been too vulnerable. So I always, I understand what you're saying about me, myself, and I, but realistically, that's a journey that you go on with yourself, about where you're at in that journey. And realization of self is more important than even having your own identity within yourself. If you can get to the point where your true identity is what you share with everyone, that's really a position of power, a position of vulnerability, a position of all things. because you relate to people on whatever ground they come to you and whatever ground you meet on, whether that's very superficial or very intense and down to every single sinew of somebody's inner being, because you can share that together because you've got some joint experience. That for me is the important thing. But again, it's down to the individual. I think some people can do that. Some people prefer to have their own separate identities. And that's not to say that either of those are right or wrong. It's just that we all have our own different ways of dealing with life. I unfortunately have lived through some things where I think it's not really worth hiding anything back. This is me. You want to ask something? I'll tell you the truth. There is no authentic self. It's just me.
But that is being authentic though, Matt, because you're presenting yourself. You like me? Shake my hand. Let's have a beer. If you don't like me, no biggie. I have my circle, you have your circle. And you're right. That's the self-awareness that we all talk about. And that's fascinating. And so there is nothing wrong with that. But you'd be surprised, though. There are a lot more people that wants to be vulnerable than we allow them to be. Like, say, again, situation test. To give you an example, how many times have you all run into some people, and especially this is and you talk about generation, the very interesting thing about maybe nowadays they don't use these words, but in the old days they do. Young man, what's your story? And they literally meant that. They asked you about your story. Because you know why? Somewhere within those clips, they're trying to find a connection so that they can connect with you at the authentic self and being vulnerable. You know what? I experienced that too. Because true connections are made during the silence between words. And that moment is during that period of vulnerability, whether it's patient to a doctor, a patient to a professional, a customer to a business owner. That's when the connections are made. Because the rest, you have scripts. We have scripts, but our connections are made during those moments, silence in between words, that one wants to see how true you are. So vulnerability is being just truthful in some ways. You know, this is how I feel. I'm sorry. Now, it's not what you say, it's how you say things. You know, there's an arrogant way of saying it, right? But then the funny thing about it is that wrong? No, because the person is so, is afraid. So that he feels he has to kind of pump up a little bit to get his words out, okay? And that's his style. So if we look through the lens of love, we understand that. We look at it, you know, no, he's just trying to get pumped up and to express himself. And then he's down back to the normal thing. So Matt, what you're saying is true, because you are who you are, as I am who I am. And same thing for Aaron and Jason and everybody else, you know, that's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm. Johnny, I want to highlight something you said about connection, because I think vulnerability is a piece of the connection puzzle. And a lot of men struggle with connection. I see a lot of folks, especially my parents' generation, like if the wife dies or gets incapacitated, the guy really has no actual friends. He just like went with his wife to all the stuff. And being vulnerable, as you say, is a really important part of being able to form human connection. I think we absorb a lot of lessons that aren't great about sort of presenting this facade of invulnerability, because that's how we're supposed to be. And that makes it very hard for other human beings to connect with us. And there are times when that's appropriate and important. Like I'm on an airplane, I really just want to go to sleep. I don't want to talk to the person next to me. So let's put up that wall. And there are other times where you have a fascinating conversation with the person next to you, or where you really need to connect with somebody for a social reason or for a business reason. And I think a lot of folks, if you're on LinkedIn, you probably want to apply this to your business in some way. Trying to put that facade of invulnerability in front of you makes it really hard for your partners and prospects to connect with you.
Yes and no, because what happened, Ruben, is this. by putting your true self out there, you can see whether the people that are pitching to you is just pitching strictly of business, money, 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 or they really, is that what you do? Let me hear. Let me, go ahead, talk to me. Let me see. Let's see how we can create 1 + 1 = 3. Versus that's entrepreneurship. Okay, 1 + 1 = 3. Just think about it. Okay, does the lemonade? Does the lemon needs the water to exist? Heck no. Does water needs lemon to exist? Heck no. They can walk side by side. Everybody's happy. But the difference is when they brought the two powerful their existence together, they smash it, whatever you want to call it, right? That infusion create a third thing that's beautiful in itself that cannot be created. And so what happens with LinkedIn, I've experienced it, and I'm sure you all have. I mean, you get tons of stuff that people come in and, there's this. It was so funny. I had one situation where I was asking this person specific things, and then she was telling me, says, oh, we don't do it that way because that way we don't make any money. I'm just trying to be short and sweet right here. But what happened was, in the end, she's just talking about herself, not, us as a team. Because if I'm here to help you, Ruben, okay, how am I be able to do that? I need to know you. I want you to tell me the whole truth, nothing but the truth, but the truth itself. And likewise, I'm telling you, so we are coming together and building this. So the beauty of it, we do that at home. We do that, in some close quarters. But if we expand that, if you think about it, right, then, we don't have to look behind our back. Now, in the meantime, yes, we do have to be cautious of who we allow to be in our circle. Like I say, again, the dartboard, is it all the way in the middle or is it up here and so forth? They have to prove themselves on that. And I appreciate you bringing that up from the standpoint of, adults and, as we spend certain things. But you'd be surprised because everybody experience things as close as they can. May not completely be exactly, but it's close enough. And that's why that concept of what's your story? Because what happens is that I'm trying to relate to it. And
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Well, when it comes to mental health, and I'm a huge mental health advocate, I've had some personal experiences with that in my own family. My mother suffered from depression for a long time, and my father currently has Alzheimer's. So, I have a huge mission, not only to help my own family, but everybody else around me. So when it comes to mental health, like you said, Johnny, there's love and there's fear. Love will convince you to connect to people and to share yourself. But fear, on the other hand, will convince you to shut down, isolate yourself, and suffer in silence. And that's the thing that is literally killing people right now. People don't have the space or the courage to share what's going on. And so people are suffering in silence and eventually commit suicide behind this. So it's a serious, serious thing when you bring up the subject of vulnerability. I think it's a strength. Again, it's not a weakness.
Well, and it comes down to also recognizing your own vulnerability, giving yourself that credit, and actually looking at your own self, your own spirit, and going, you know what, like I need to have an honest conversation with myself. Right? Stepping back to what LaChelle was talking about earlier, like how do you know, or maybe it was Alex, how do you know when you can actually be vulnerable with somebody? Well, good friend of mine, obviously from LinkedIn, Nancy Deborah Barrows. I mean, she gives 4 key values that enable you to actually use and apply to figure out whether that person is worth being vulnerable with. Anybody that actually cares about you will give you that genuine being seen, heard, loved, and valued. That gives you the space to actually open up and be vulnerable. Now, the other thing it comes down to is your matter of communication. And it's not just simply with your ability to speak. It's actually reading other people's communication with you. You can tell those people that are ready to embrace you because they make the eye contact. They're generally looking at you. They're looking at your eyes. They're engaged in the conversation, and you do feel that ability of I'm being heard. They're valuing my words because they're nodding, they're acknowledging, right? The one major thing that, it all boils down to is your own perspective view. And two words that I use all the time is perspective culture. How can you see your own vulnerability if you've never been shown? How do you know that something's wrong when you've grown up in a culture where this is actually appropriate and in another culture it's completely inappropriate? Right? So until you start to develop that ability to actually open up your perspective, get insight, reach out to others, and not be afraid to reach out, I'm not seeing this the same way. Could you enlighten me? Is there some other way that I can see this? Right? So until we know and we can recognize within ourselves that, there's more going on to this picture, there's a lot of us that do end up falling through the way, falling through the cracks and not getting to the end of our lives and going, what happened? If you don't take that moment to be true and genuine, and as we talked about, authentic, and I mean, the first person that you need to do that with is yourself. It's not anybody outside of your circle. When you are first true and, genuine with yourself and you commit to that, I'm going to work to me. I'm going to work to doing the things that I need to do. I'm going to work to my own self-care. I'm going to work on my communication. That, when you start to apply that and commit to that, that gives you the momentum to actually take that olive branch of being vulnerable with others and going, you know what, I've worked through this, I've worked through that. There's certain deliveries, there's certain approaches that we can change for everybody that's out there. You've just got to find out what the currency is.
Love that.
It's like he's setting me up for my entire.
Oh, I love you, milady.
Love that.
Is it my turn? I didn't know if
we're on you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, beautiful. Well, thank you, because you did a great job of kind of taking the men's talk over to where I was going to lead to, and he just merged them beautifully in the middle. So I'm Mistilei, for those of you who didn't see me in the beginning, from Campground TBD Publishing. And thank you guys for everything that you've said. And I want to kind of just tie in the Mistyism to it. So I see vulnerability as the willingness to be exactly who I am in my world as much as possible, without regard to how the other person is going to respond. And so that I cultivate those relationships. So if I come over here and I say, I'm running just a few minutes late, and that person is offended, then I have to say, okay, let's get up there, get through this meeting. And then I can step back from that if necessary, because maybe I'm not, she has 15 kids. If you're going to get mad if she's 1 second late, that might not, although she's never been late to anything that I know, but that might not be a place to be where I could be vulnerable in that space. But that's for me to track. The other thing that I love about what we talked about is situational. So if you are wanting to talk to someone about why you want to save a little bit of money on your marketing, it is not appropriate to talk about because your husband left you because he was cheating on you with this person. That's oversharing. It's not vulnerability, actually. It's you trying to work through something in an inappropriate lane. So that's where you're bringing, I think laundry should be outside in your own backyard. You don't take the laundry with you to the bank and take it over here to the grocery store. Keep it in your laundry. And then that way you decide who sees your laundry in your yard. And then that's that space of unconditional love. But what I want to get back to is I know from some of the changes I've made in my own life is I really had to cultivate those places and be willing to step outside and say, hey, I used to explode 3 weeks from now, but I would like to just catch this right now, because this just happened and I don't want to assign any meaning to it. And then we never get to that big vulnerable, I'm crying and I have to break down, because we shared those little baby steps of communication instead of that. People say I avoid conflict. And usually you could have avoided conflict had you had that conversation 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so that's where I think those vulnerability baby steps really are a beautiful place. So my question to the men was, as women, how can we invite you to kind of baby step cultivate these relationships? And I, as the single woman in the group, I'm going to ask without coming across flirtatious, because sometimes vulnerability can be seen as an offer of another type of relationship. And so I'd like to be able to say, hey, I want to brainstorm with you to come up with a way that we can work together in business without any confusion that I'm asking for us to be vulnerable in this spot. So that's what I wanted to offer to the panel is how do we communicate men to women in a vulnerable space?
Okay.
It's a very. Oh, I'm sorry. Go, John.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
You know, it's a very slippery slope, and we all know that, and that's why you're bringing it up. You know, I referee sports and I do a whole bunch of stuff, and I've never met a coach that doesn't want to win. What do I mean by that? Does he want to play the worst players? No, he wants to win, or he or she wants to win. That being said, in this day and age, people are looking for the best value as possible. Now, is there going to be possibly some quote unquote flirtation in a relationship? I'm not going to lie. Probably yes. And it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm wrong by saying that. I see America's Supermom all the time. She talks Spanish to me. I try to talk Spanish back to her. I don't know what the heck she's saying. I don't know what the heck she's saying, but it sounds really good in Spanish. She can be telling me she's taking out the laundry, and it sounds great. But my point being is, you know what? That quote unquote attraction, it's not necessarily that other level of it, but there could be that type of thing. If you set your ground rules right away, that's fine. But sometimes the ground rules don't apply. And I go to this story. My daughter, who's 8, she started karate when she was 3 years old. And I purposely put her in karate for a reason, not to be able to kick somebody's butt. But you know what? I tell people all the time, every kid should be in karate. It teaches you a whole bunch of things. It teaches you discipline, it teaches you this, teaches you that. Okay? I live in the East Coast. I live in New Jersey. And I tell all my friends who are, you know, why isn't your kid in karate? Oh, well, it's too much of this and it's too much of that. I'm like, let me tell you something. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because there's somebody that's 6'4", that's whatever, that may try to take advantage of my daughter. And he's not going to say, oh, well, we're in a Me Too society, so I'm going to stop. It doesn't work that way. So she may remember something that she learned when she was 3 or 4. And I know maybe I'm bringing this to a different level, but that's just what's coming to my mind right now. And it's about putting the groundwork down. You can't expect people to do the right thing if they've never been taught. It's about accountability from day one. So there are teachers out there and there's business owners that pretty much, like America's Supermom, you don't mess around with her. She knows what she's doing, and she is the way she is. And you know when you're going to her, it's about business, and this is what we do. Plus, she's so exhausted, she doesn't have time to do anything else. But my point being is, if you set that ground rule right off the bat, the same way if Aaron's doing a HVAC thing or whatever we're doing here, you have to have that attitude right up front. So maybe that's just my take on it.
That's good.
Thank you.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about vulnerability and so forth, right? There are a couple of things. Number one is, are you listening in anticipation to reply, or are you listening to learn? If you're listening to learn, then you're learning. And that's where you can give your all. You know, it's serving the ball back to the other person versus, you know, just, you know, well, let me tell you something. You got to do it this way. Really? I mean, you know, did you hear what I just said? Okay. And the other thing, when you talk about flirtation and all this, the interesting thing about it, you know, I teach and perform ballroom dancing and so forth. And, you know, there are times when I'm dancing with my professional dance partner years ago, okay, when we were practicing. Well, guess what, ladies? I mean, sometimes things happen, you know, if you get my drift, you know, we're swinging around, and she knows whether I'm reaching for that intentionally or unintentionally. It just happens, right? So intentions is very important. So you know whether the other person is intentionally trying to slide something there versus, you know. So this is us. Again, it's about us. And besides that, in dancing, you know, there's regardless whether you're doing salsa or whatever, right? I have my space, you have your space. The question is, you know, we have what we call frame that we hold up. It's still soft. I don't have to be like, I'm holding this guy like, or this woman like she's trying to kill me or anything, but it's just soft. But you'll know where somebody is trying to get into your space, where you could, you know, hey, I don't know what you're trying to do, but I'm just feeling you right here. It's a little bit hard, but it's a little bit strong here. Maybe we need to back it off. But I think in the end, what happens is that when you're focused on the agenda, when you have some things that you're trying to create, people will know whether, ladies, who's trying to lean on you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And men, we know who's trying to lean on us. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not, I think that's not a big issue in the sense, respectfully, that is, it's the intent. You can tell. So vulnerability comes from a standpoint of that ability of, knowing that I can say what I want to say without being, yeah, let me, you can see the guy doing a little moonwalk. Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. No, because they're there and you can see, like what Aaron was saying, you can see in the eyes, in that moment of quietness, actually the true connections happen. And with regards to your talking about, the laundry, occasionally you got to bring it up, because what happens is that that's through you. If they don't see that, and the other part of vulnerability is this, there's a big difference between vulnerability and me imposing myself in your space. That's a big difference. Mm-hmm. I am where I am. I'm right here. If you don't accept me, that's fine. Ladies, you've gone out on dates before and you said, yeah. And men, we've done the same thing. Okay. So that's being vulnerable. We are vulnerable, but then, it's not that our invulnerability that, that ends the deal. It's just that it's not a connection. That's the difference. And that comes back again to the intention behind the whole thing. I don't think you have a problem in terms of connecting with the men, women, or whatever if you're working on a project, because we both believe in something that is legit. We'll give it our all to succeed. What is going to hold it back is your integrity. Like they always say, you can burn me once, but you can't burn me twice.
This is good. Ruben, we're over to you. Ruben and then Jason, and then we're gonna, this is awesome, you guys. I mean, an hour is just not enough time. Okay?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's already, the time is flying.
It's not enough time, but go ahead, Ruben, we're over to you. What are your thoughts about the question?
Well, there's so many things so many interlocking pieces here and so many great points that people have raised. And I guess one of the things that I would just like to leave with people is something that I struggled with for a long time is, how do you present who you are? And for a lot of people, especially in a professional setting, it's almost like we have a resume or a bio or something like that frankly is boring. It is the invulnerable facade of who we are. And what I would instead encourage everyone to think about is, what is your origin story? And it's like Johnny was saying, what's your story, young man, right? There's a reason that people ask that question. And that's the story that we should be sharing, rather than that, I have these credentials, I went to that school, I raised this much money, blah, 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 blah. Because no one can connect to that. It's just a way of pushing people away and saying, I'm not willing to let you into my space. But when you're willing to share that origin story, people can understand not only what you do, but why you do it, and whether they want to be part of your tribe or not, which is totally fine as well. So I just encourage people to think about it, especially if you're on LinkedIn right now, go look at your profile. Does your About Me section read like an award list, or does it read like an origin story?
You know what? That is so good, because I think, I look at it. I was on a call right before this call, and really being able to set the context. We wonder why people aren't vulnerable, or, people don't want to open up, but we don't set the stage for that. And so when you take that time to create that origin story, or, add it to some of your profile in different places where people may not expect to see it, but it's there, it kind of sets the tone for people that reach out to you. It's them connecting on that piece of whatever resonated with them, and so they're able to continue. So I love that you share that. That's good stuff. Okay, over to you, Jason.
Okay, so just to piggyback off of what Ruben said, and to answer Misty's question as well, I think that it really doesn't matter what the situation is. I think that as long as you're acting from the standpoint of love, you're going to attract the thing that you want, which is connection, a safe space, good relationships, right? But I think that if you're acting out of a standpoint of fear, that's what you're going to attract. You're going to attract the thing that you don't want. Somebody crazy, somebody that, is going to do something terrible to you. I mean, that's what you're going to attract. So I think that as long as you're acting from a standpoint of love, you can never go wrong.
Yep, good points. Well, this has been a dynamic conversation, and there's so many different layers to the questions that we could go down so many different nuances. But I first just want to again say thank you so much to you all as the panel for being able to share openly about your thoughts and beliefs when it comes to this topic of vulnerability. And we want to go through, and because I have tons of notes over here, to hear what everybody else's takeaway is. This is my favorite part. So as we come to you and you share your takeaway, please share how the best way for people to get a hold of you and things of that nature. And I know I'll start with you, Johnny, because you do have a gift that you sent me for everybody. So I'll let you mention that, and then we'll put access to that in the comments. So
wonderful.
Over to you. We'll start with you, Johnny.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, LaChelle, I truly appreciate the invite to be sharing my time here with all these wonderful gentlemen and ladies, and really, truly a wonderful conversation. With regards to what I do, I'm from my mama's kitchen is my background. I wrote this book that turned out to be a best-selling and multi-award-winning book years ago, honoring my 9 moms. They were my teachers, my coaches, my counselors, and that's the foundation of my company. And basically, in a nutshell, personal success begins at home. Home, not necessarily just home where the family lives, but home is where we live right here. And so over the years, I've keynote speech, I've done tons of things and all that. And fast forward, the wonderful gift that I have for everyone is one of the things that I do is I'm a publisher of the digital magazine called Inspirations for Better Living. And this magazine is about helping moms build a better future for themselves, their families, and their loved ones. And it's not about necessarily raising Junior, it's about mommy herself. Because when mom feels good and happy, that energy sort of reverberates throughout her neighborhood, her community, and so forth. And that's what it's all about. We have wonderful experts that contribute to this magazine. LaChelle, you're one of them. And it was fantastic to have your story in the magazine. And so what I do is that for this spring, I like to give every one of you an opportunity to just pick up the magazine on us as a free gift. So LaChelle, you have the code that you can pass along to anyone. And this is for 1 full year subscriptions. But that special code also allows you to go back and look at all our 22 or 28 prior publications since its inception in May of 2021, as a matter of fact. And over the years, we have really created something wonderful. And it's a fun magazine to read because what it is that it things like, to give you an example, notes from the fridge, kitchen table conversation, mama's me time, and just little things, nuggets like that, that we as gentlemen, we can connect as well. And over the years, I've had gentlemen that actually contribute to it as well. Nana's and Papa's wisdom, the gentleman that actually who created or invented the cell phone, he is in one of the Papa's wisdom that wrote a beautiful column for Father's Day in 2021.
Love that. All right. Well, we thank you so much for being here and appreciate all the insights that you've shared with everybody today, and looking forward for you guys coming back. I mean, this is awesome. So we'll go over to you, Aaron, your final takeaway, and how do we get a hold of you?
So many great points brought up today. There's hard to pick any one. You know what? For me, I've come through a very difficult journey in when it comes to dealing with adversities. And I would not be here today and have the successes I have here today without being vulnerable. So for me, I mean, it was just a few years ago. I lost everything. I lost my home, I was living out of my car, eating raw KD and tuna, and literally fought back, doing my PTSD therapy, still working through supporting my son. And if I did not take that one moment to be vulnerable, to reach out to people, I would not be here today. I can openly say that. If I had not had the help and support that I've received, as well as coming onto the platform here on LinkedIn, my story would have been completely different. And I give humble thanks and appreciation to everybody that's been with me on this journey. And take that chance, reach out, be vulnerable with somebody that you know that sees you, hears you, values you, and loves the spirit that you are. You can find me, as I almost segued off into a whole nother avenue. You can find me strictly not strictly on LinkedIn. My major platform is here on LinkedIn. I'm one of the remote producers for Voice Revived, which airs on Wednesdays and Saturdays for What's Good's Wednesdays and Shout Out Saturdays. Other than that, I'm a fierce supporter of one and all. I do nothing pretty much but show up, give you my big burly hugs, and give you an open ear if you ever need it. I do a group here on LinkedIn that's called Reach Out Religion that I actually co-host with Dr. Nupi Aurora, which encourages that there's no shame in reaching out, that there are people here to listen, and that, you know what, if you take that moment to be vulnerable, the dreams can come true.
You know what? This is just great stuff, y'all. I mean, we could have a show on what everybody is doing. It's good stuff. All right, we're over to you, Alex. It's so good to have you today. We never see each other in person.
I know. I didn't realize, what did you look like? I was like, oh my gosh, I finally get to see. When I'm not doing this kind of stuff, I actually own a company called Care First Training Group. We teach people how to save a life. We do it through CPR, first aid, OSHA training, as well as babysitting training. I'm a firm believer the only way you solve problems is by training people the right way. And if you get them early enough, then they know what to do. It's not if something happens, it's when it happens and how you handle it. The way you can get in touch with me via LinkedIn or website, which is Care First CPR, and it's spelled number 1 ST, CPR.com. I train mostly in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, but I have done stuff all over the country. I have instructor network, and my biggest takeaway is, about vulnerability is, yes, everybody is vulnerable, whether they like it or not. It's about having a plan on where to find the right help. I think that's the biggest thing that people don't understand. Women or men, it's just finding the right plan. I think men have just had a difficult time finding the right help at the right time. And hopefully this will get people to at least think about that. And with the resources that are out there, I think it'll be a lot better for people than it was 5 years ago or last year even. So thank you for the time. I really appreciate you guys letting me come in.
Love that. Thank you so much for being here. I mean, I'm taking notes, y'all. This is some good stuff. Good takeaways. All right, we're over to you, Matt. Your final thoughts. Where can we get a hold of you?
Okay. Thanks, LaChelle. So final thoughts, really, I go back to the fact that we should all be vulnerable. We should all be truthful and honest to ourselves as well as to other people. And by being able to do that, that's as a result of examining ourselves and being at the point where we can share ourselves. Vulnerability is not about having hidden identities, but about having reality and actuality of our actions and our feelings and our emotions, and the things that we aim to give to other people. I am available through only LinkedIn or YouTube. People may be familiar with me in the chat. If you're not familiar with me, all I'm going to say is that you need to have a chat with me to find out who I am and what I'm doing. If you're familiar with me, you are the miracle. You understand what that means. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Matt Allen Kudos or hashtag you are the miracle, and you'll find me through that. There's a lot of hidden information about what I do. It's not easy to explain on a call like this. It's nice to, like my friend Johnny said, listen to people, understand what's important for them, and deliver on that on every single level. Trust me, we need change. Business needs to change. There's a way to do that. Have a chat with me. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you so much, Matt. And I appreciate you connecting me to Jason, who was also on the panel. So thank you so much for that. We're just growing. I love it. All right. So, Ruben, we're over to you.
Well, like everyone said, thanks for having me here. It's been a great time. I've learned a bunch. And one of the things that I'm always trying to do is sort of get rid of the barnacles that accumulate on us as we pass through life and get back to the essentials and to try to show up and be present and be authentic and be vulnerable and just be myself, because it's actually more exhausting to be anybody else. And if you're interested in finding more about what I do, you can find me on LinkedIn. Obviously, I accidentally built what I call the fun anti-CRM for independent consultants who love serving clients but hate selling. And a lot of that is about how do you actually just connect with people human to human. I'm also the host and chief nerd on the Sales for Nerds podcast, so you can find that wherever you might want to listen to podcasts. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here, Ruben, and appreciate everything that you've shared. And, you know, this is the great thing. I don't get a chance to have deep conversations sometimes with a lot of the people that I get connected to, but I love these platforms because it's just another way to kind of hear more about what everybody believes and those insights. And you find you have so much more in common and ahas. And, you know, you start talking about that person through the week. Cause it's like, do you know what they said on the show? That was awesome. You know, like I love that me, myself, and I thing. So that was great. All right. So Jason, we are over to you. Your final thoughts. How can we connect with you?
I encourage everybody who's listening, connect to everybody on this panel. I mean, we got some amazing individuals here. Everybody's doing something special. So do that first. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. This is where I live, y'all. So you can find me at JW the Healer, and we'll connect. We can have a private chat, and I can tell you more about what I do. But my main activity right now is podcast producing. So I produce people's shows. It really doesn't matter what subject it is. That's my passion. That's what I enjoy. And nice to be here. Thank you.
Love it. Well, thank you guys again for being here. You have made this conversation so valuable. So many people have had some great takeaways that they have been putting in the comments the whole time. And Mary has been back there communicating with everybody. So this is awesome. But I encourage you guys to reach out to our panel guests. I mean, they have said some great dynamic shares and insights, and it's just a great opportunity to kind of continue the conversation from where we are leaving off. It's a great way to connect and kind of attack that hard conversation with a lot of the groundwork already being set. So thank you, gentlemen, all so much for being here. And we look forward to seeing y'all again next time. Okay. All right. So we are going to be doing a little outro. What our final thoughts were for everybody. So excited to have had this wonderful cast of guests that have joined us today. So again, like I said, I have a lot of notes on what was said. Let's start with Mary, because Mary was, you know, really communicating to a lot of people that were in the audience with the comments. So what is your final takeaway, Mary? What do you want to highlight that we might have missed?
Well, we had a lot of good conversation in the chat as well, and I would encourage everybody afterwards to, go read some of the comments. There were some links shared to, as people were talking, several ideas being sparked about, hey, this makes me think of this, or this is how I'm authentic, or this is something that we can do to bring in the vulnerability pieces. So that was fun. That was fun to watch and interact with everybody. So thank y'all for everybody that is in the chat as well. And the final thought is we're going to have to keep on doing these, LaChelle. You keep on bringing in these fellas, and I think
I'm telling you, they are doing good, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what my thought is. I'm thinking, man, we got to have some more of this. So I'm so glad that that's a thing that maybe you'll consider. I feel like it gives us a good opportunity to ask those good questions and get the peace of mind. And LaChelle, I want to thank you for always opening the spaces. And I know now you're venturing onto a new journey with your your community, and people are asking how they can reach you and how they can get there. So if you'll address that in just a moment, but also told them to reach out directly to you. But building the community means vulnerably saying, hey, I've been there too. I want to help you through this. And here's something that helped me kind of get to where I am now. So I feel like when we can relate to people open-mindedly and get through those pieces, connecting with people in a community like you're building, having the safe space to talk about things, it really does make a difference. So definitely, if you don't mind, LaChelle, can you tell everybody how we could get to the community, what you're doing with that? Do you mind to share that? Because they're asking in the chat.
Absolutely. So again, thank you guys so much for being here and for listening. And Raschell and Misty and I have started out where this is actually an extension of a collaboration that we started through them being guests on my live stream TV series. And from that, we have made a partnership to extend the time that we spend together and really merge our audiences together to build our brand collectively beyond just a one-time 30-minute segment on a live stream TV series. And so this is how we sparked this partnership. And then from there, we've had a lot of people come in that have been providing so much value and insight, and people want to begin to be more transparent and have that self-awareness about areas where they might be weak. And so I am creating a mastermind for that. So there is an opportunity for people to connect with me directly about that. But this is a great opportunity for you to get accountability, for you to continue to grow in your own area, but also collaborate with people that don't hinder who you are. You continue to be who you are, and you just get more connections and more opportunities to speak and to grow in an area that serves you. So that is what I have going on with the mastermind. So thank you guys so much for asking the question, and reach out if that's something of interest to you. So we are over to you, Raschell. What are your final takeaways about today's conversation?
I think for today, it was very interesting. I listened a lot, very carefully to the words that were being used. And for me, what I really picked up on was the vulnerability, but there was this like cross-reference of validation. So whether or not you shared what you wanted to share was whether or not you feel validated. And then there's a whole another conversation around validation, but it's that validation of, am I worthy enough to be vulnerable? And so that's where I really noticed in a lot of the conversation was that validation of being vulnerable. And that, like I said, that's a whole other conversation we could have. But that for me was a big takeaway.
That's good. That could be another topic for another day, because validation was huge. That was one of my stumbling blocks, I would say, or mountains that I had to overcome.
It is for a lot of people.
Yes,
a lot of people. Yeah.
So I love that. All right, over to you now. What do you have coming up this week? Anything going on?
This week, I have a podcast coming out tomorrow with Kim Jacques. Very excited to share that with everybody. Yes, the lovely lady that you referred me to. So that's coming out tomorrow. And I thank to Misty, I get to speak with, is it Dallin? I think it's Dallin, right? Am I saying the name
Dallin
right?
Brimhall, nice. Oh,
so
nice.
just to share, he is going to be, I don't think he realizes this, the first male that comes on my podcast.
Oh, that's going to touch his heart so much. That will really touch his heart. Oh, he's a beautiful, beautiful soul.
That is awesome. All right. So here we go. These men are just, coming on over. I love it. All right. And you've got quite a few men that you can choose from for today.
Yeah.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, exactly. And for you, Misty?
Well, I've got an exciting week coming out. I've got my campground opening this weekend in the Ouachita's near Mena, Arkansas. This is my beautiful oasis. Yes, this is 30 years of a vision board, and it's all exactly as I've written. So it's very Christmas Eve around here for me all week. And next week, with Dallin, your guest, Raschell and LaChelle, America's Supermom, we have our book Now What coming out on the 23rd. So I have 40 authors publishing next week. So I'm very excited about that.
Love it.
It's real Christmas over here for me right now.
I love it. Now, so what was your key takeaway from today?
Well, I was kind of like with Raschell. I'm realizing that it's the other person's, and I don't want to use the word expectation, but how it's received. And for me, it brought back what I had to learn, because that was a stumbling block for me, is that once I just decided to be me, and because I'm not a mean person, I don't say mean things. I just stood in my presence. The right people stuck around, and the people who it wasn't their thing didn't. And now I don't really worry so much about vulnerability, because this is who I am. So I liked that piece, being aware of that reception is really more the key than the ability to say it. So I liked that part.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. Well, there was one person, I don't think I got a chance to write down their name, but they said they started living once truth was allowed to drive. I was like, that just really hit home for me, because when we're able to walk in our truth, there's so many weights that are removed from us. That's my story. So that really resonated with me. But
well, in my story, I lost actually. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, LaChelle.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, my story, once I started living authentically, I actually lost over 100 pounds. The weight literally lifted off me, because I just became who I was. So it really does wear on our soul, physically and spiritually.
Yes, absolutely.
So, well, this has been an amazing, amazing conversation. We want to thank everybody who has joined us. Mary, a special thank you to you for man in the comments. I mean,
they're good ones. Yeah, I hope y'all go back and reread. Seriously, some people shared some really touching things that I think brings a lot of heart and warmth to this conversation. So definitely check them out.
Yeah. And, we also want to invite, if you have something that you would like to share, we're working on having the men once a month, but anytime, if you have some insights that you would like to come and join us at the table, so to speak, we would love to have you. So we'll also be putting the link for that in the comments for everybody to come and join us. Okay. With that conversation. But again, we just want to say thank you guys so much. And we look forward to seeing you guys all on the next episode. Bye for now.